Hello, my name is Steve Dubin. I am your host for South Shore Senior News's podcast, My Generation. On a regular basis, we feature uh, experts and topics that are of interest to seniors and the sandwich generation, those who help them out. Today, we have an interesting guest who will talk about the very difficult issue of foreclosure and how to manage that issue for yourself or get help for a friend or relative. And today we have Mike Russell with us from an organization called Hope4Hardship, which is a free service for anyone who needs that help. And let me bring you on, Mike, and let me ask you how you got into developing this nonprofit that offers the service for free.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate being here. So how'd I get into it? I've been in the real estate business my whole life, really my whole adult life since I was 19 years old. My family owned a Century 21 franchise when I was just a kid, and it seemed like the path of least resistance for me to head into that career, And so I stuck with it. I've been doing that for 30 years now. And a big part of being in and around the real estate business, of course, is all the human emotions that happen when people transact real estate or own real estate. And I did a lot of work in the early years representing banks who had already foreclosed on properties and were then, we were tasked with marketing and selling those assets. And so I got to see at a pretty young age a lot of the strife and pain that people go through when they are being, effectively escorted out of the homes that they owned before the bank foreclosed on them. And that always stuck with me. It was always the sad, unfortunate emotions that stuck with me as a kid. I was pretty observant to this, and what I witnessed was tragic by anyone's account. And so I had a lot of experience with it early on the other end of this thing, and then I faced my own struggles. Financial crisis, really, mostly born of my own poor decisions over the course of my 20s and into my 30s. And I put my family in some pretty tough spots as it related to real estate. And I effectively created foreclosure events in my family, both my immediate family and for myself, like I said, through poor decisions. And but I turned my life around after I did that. It took me a while to kind of see the forest through the trees, but the only reason that I'm here with you today or created this nonprofit is because of the turnaround in my life. And what keeps me engaged and curious and energetic about this effort in helping other people is I enjoy playing a small role in bearing witness to the turnaround in other people's lives. And I'm a firm believer of the idea that if I can do it, absolutely anybody can. That's kind of how I feel about my own story of struggle. And so that just, it's part of my healing, if I'm being honest. Helping other people turn around otherwise tragic situations is far more important than money to me. It's part of my own healing process to see the turnaround in other people and help people create a more positive trajectory in their lives by helping them avoid foreclosure, which in my experience is almost always avoidable.
Okay, and so we'll get into sort of what's the process, how long does it
Sure.
take, what does it
Yeah.
involve? But
Yeah.
let me ask you sort of generally, what's the description that leads people to foreclosure? What happens to them where they become on the brink like that?
Well, granularly, non-payment of mortgage, right? So that's typically what leads someone to foreclosure. Philosophically, I would say I've yet to meet somebody that's facing foreclosure who doesn't have a litany of other problems in life that are often more pressing and deeper ingrained in order to solve. And so, to get to a point, in my experience, the very last bill you stop paying is your mortgage. It's the one you try to pay up to the very last minute. So it's look, there are true victims in this world for sure, victims of abuse, victims of any number of things in life. And so I meet a lot of those people. I meet a fair amount of people that I wouldn't say it was all their fault. I meet other people who are equally culpable in the events, and I meet people who are wholly responsible on their own, much like, I felt like I was, for my issues. So it's a broad spectrum of situations, all related in some way to the general human condition of people and the decision making and naivete and inexperience in dealing with a bank. Most people are afraid of the bank. And that's just a function of not understanding what the bank's position is and what options may be available. And so it's a very wide spectrum of people that I meet and that I help.
Okay. And so let's go to the process. So
Sure.
at what point, where's the sort of cross section of when people usually reach out to you?
Sure. So it is. I would identify reaching out to me unsolicited as rare. It Most folks are not that proactive. What happens here in the state of Massachusetts is, and really in every state, there is something called a notice of intent to foreclose that is recorded with land court. And the way that works is the lender, upon a certain level of default, level being how many months behind, and there is no exact finite number of months, but the longer you don't pay your mortgage, the sooner you're going to get a notice of intent to foreclose. That document is part of the Soldier and Sailors Act. So back in the original Iraq War, Bush Sr. maybe kind of identified, hey, we're foreclosing on active military members who are over there fighting. We need to stop that. We need to give them an extended window of opportunity to remedy the issue. And so that is a requirement in the United States. They must serve the Soldier and Sailors Act. And so it's a pretty unceremonious activity where a constable comes and knocks on your door and hands you a letter that I very rarely meet people that understand what it means. That letter is very simple, and it says, if you are in the active military, come forth, you or a representative, to this court, being the land court, by this date. That date is typically 45 days in the future from the day you receive the letter. And so what people don't usually understand is that the bank is handcuffed at that point. They cannot take the next step in foreclosure until that date has passed, or until if you volunteered that information by calling the attorney and saying, I'm not in the active military. And so that 45-day window of once that notice is delivered is your point of inflection where it is time to call me so we can begin to craft the remedy to this problem to avoid the foreclosure event. So that it's a pretty specific time, the sweet spot of when I would most like to speak to people. And that notice is a public event. And so when that notice is recorded with land court, it becomes public knowledge. And the unfortunate reality of that is that means that a whole bunch of people and entities and companies, in my opinion, seek to capitalize on the perceived misfortune of others. And so once that public event occurs, the people are inundated with phone calls, mail, people knocking on their door. Mostly people who want to buy the property for cheap, want to not force, but suggest strongly that they sell their property, or convince them that filing bankruptcy is the right play. And my stance and my belief and my experience is it is far too early in the game for someone to make a decision like that. Just because that notice was recorded does not mean that any of those three things need to happen. I will say that in the future, after exhausting every effort to retain the property, those three options may become a way to avoid foreclosure, but not that early in the game. And that's really what I've tried to create here is an opportunity to help people exhaust every single human possibility for them to stay in their home and not lose it prior to suggesting any of those things, which may never be a viable option.
And so talk a little bit about the remedies that you do suggest and help implement.
Sure. So, look, there are two inalienable truths about mortgages and homes, right? Is there is no bank in the country, possibly in the world, who wants to foreclose on a property. And there is no homeowner in America who wants to be foreclosed on. Those two truths are absolute. And so, although banks will take steps to, of course, protect their collateral, which would by way of foreclosing it and taking ownership back, so they can recoup their investment, they don't want to do that. They want to work with every homeowner that falls behind. Every bank makes an effort to reach out and elicit a response from the homeowner. But if you're anything like me, I had 2 years of mail sitting on my dining room table that was unopened, and in hindsight, the answers were in that mail, right? But that goes back to the fear that people possess when they are being, for lack of a better term, chased, pursued, sometimes aggressively by the very entity that they are afraid of. And what I have learned over the years is that all these banks want to do is talk. They would like to speak to the homeowner. They would like to offer assistance. And so that is what we do for people. We craft reasonable applications for assistance that are both true, and we understand they are both true, accurate, but well crafted, right? We have to describe the hardship that is happening. And banks have two buckets when they are ready to work with someone. And after the application process is completed, which can take 6 weeks, they typically offer two buckets of avenues, and that is a retention list of opportunities. So they retain the asset that you keep your home under any of 5 or 6 different programs that they may offer. And then there are non-retention options. If they are unwilling to work with you to retain the home, they will always work with you on different ways that they can disperse of the asset, and they will offer assistance in that manner. And so our sole mission is to get to the results that the bank conjures up based on the review of the application that we craft and submit to the bank. And once those results are issued, we consult with the homeowner about what we believe the best option to be. I would say that 70% of the time, retention options are available. As in, you can keep the home and we will offer you this kind of assistance. And those vary. One of the toughest things right now going on that why this is so important to me is there are so many people who are bound into a 30, sometimes 40-year mortgage, fixed rate under 3%. And the problem that we face in this country today, as it relates to a lot of things, and certainly real estate, is the affordability index. Today, the affordability index in Massachusetts for real estate is 48, which means that the median income is 48% of what it requires to purchase the median priced home. That is the lowest affordability index that this country has seen since 79, 80, 81, when interest rates were 16.4%. The Fed rate was 9.5%. Inflation was 15%. Homes are simply unaffordable. And so why it's so important to me to help people retain these tremendously well-termed, long-term fixed mortgage rates is because if they do leave their home, finding affordable, comparable housing is next to impossible. Now, depending on what type of loan you have, if it's government-backed, Ginnie Mae or Fannie or Freddie backed, or if it's FHA, if it's out in the secondary market, it's a government-backed loan, you have available to you so many phenomenal options to retain your property. But every month that goes by with a non-payment and non-communication and no proactive action, those options lessen. The longer you're behind, the less likely the bank is willing to work with you under the full spectrum of all their options. Timing's crucial. And I consider myself well experienced and tremendously skilled at negotiating these things for people. But I just need their active engagement with me to do it.
Okay, and the process itself, you're based in Dartmouth, Massachusetts, but that doesn't limit you geographically, correct?
No, not at all. No, no. We'll listen. We'll do this anywhere in the country.
Okay, and
We'll do this
so
anywhere in the country.
so the communication between you and the person who's being foreclosed on and their bank is typically done virtually, via email, phone,
Sure.
Zoom calls, and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we travel a lot, so I'll meet people anywhere in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, sometimes Florida. We'll meet people anywhere. Um, but as far as communication with the bank, of course, it's fax, email, telephone calls, and the portal. The customer has a portal. The best friend to anybody that has a mortgage is the online portal. It's the quickest way I've run, tests where they'll publish an important letter in your portal and you won't receive it in the mail for 7 to 8 days. So the quickest way to the answers is to have access to that portal and be able to communicate that way. Seamlessly upload documents. I'll tell you something about this application process. I've yet to construct, and I really think we do a phenomenal job here, a perfect application. Every time, and I'm still waiting for the one time that it works, the bank comes back and says, oh, we need this too. Oh, we need this too. And if I'm being completely honest, that's where the average consumer loses traction, is the naivete or inexperience of the consumer. They get a 7-page application, they fill it out to their best ability, they send it into the bank, and they wait. And the reality is that it's not the bank's job to chase you, it's your job to chase the bank, period, stop. And that's what we excel at here, is we follow up with the bank every 3 business days and we just get a status update. What's going on? How were the last docs we sent? Is everything kosher? Does everything work? Is there anything missing? Do you need a letter of explanation? Do you need whatever it is that you need? We're there to make sure that they get it. Because the idea is you want to get that application under review with the bank as fast as humanly possible. Under review is done by the underwriting department of the bank, no different than when you originally applied for the mortgage. They take your application, they send it to underwriting, and the bank is determining whether or not you, the consumer, you, the mortgagor, are a viable bet. Can we trust, based on this information, that if we assist with the arrearage, if we assist with the past due, will they be able to reasonably resume their normal payments in a short 90-day window of time? And so while they're under review, the foreclosure process is paused, and they will not take another step while they're reviewing the file. Getting them under review is about getting the bank to deem the application complete and under review. And that's where the average consumer loses track of this thing and they lose traction. Is they submit an application, they think everything's good, and the next thing you know, there's an auction scheduled on the property. And so that's really the sweet spot where we come in, is we make sure that this thing is complete. We do everything in our power to do that. We make sure it's well crafted. We make sure that we stay in touch during the review period. We monitor the portal and we get back to them as soon as a result is issued. And then we typically meet personally to review the results, and we choose the best direction to head in.
And I would assume the bank is probably reassured even by the fact that a third party such as yourself
Sure.
is involved and there's some gravitas
Sure.
with the commitment of working with a third party to try to
Yeah.
get it done
Yeah.
to everybody's positive resolve.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, yes, you're 100% correct. And just here's a perfect example, right? When my DVR doesn't work at my house and I call Comcast, I can't keep myself calm. I cannot stand dealing with Comcast about a stupid issue on that's my own problem. I don't have those emotions and I don't have that short temper, not temper, but less patience when I'm doing it on someone else's behalf. So that really the thing here that I believe is most valuable that we offer is we are an emotional barrier because I understand going through it myself multiple times that if it's me, look, if this was me losing my home, my fear is through the roof. My anxiety is through the roof. My patience is nil. And so when I'm communicating about my own debt that is in default, um, I get really irritated with the people on the phone. And I know that for a fact because I do three-way calls with the debtor and myself and the bank on a regular basis in the beginning of this. And they can't accept that that document is missing. They cannot accept that that document wasn't. I don't possess any of that. My team doesn't. We are not burdened by the past of the debtor. The debtor is. And so that emotional barrier that we provide makes this um, look, let's be real. When you're talking to any human being, it is about cooperative, charm, humor, keeping things light, keeping things on point, not getting angry, not getting frustrated. That's just simple 101, you know, effective communication skills, right? Tremendously easy to do when you are not emotionally bound to the situation. Impossible to do when you're the one with 2 years worth of mail on your dining room table and perhaps guilty of pointing fingers and blaming other people and not enough thumbs. I'm a big believer in that. Too many fingers, not enough thumbs.
Gotcha. Well, we've come to the end of this segment. I'm sure people are going to want to contact you about either their own situation or someone else they know who needs help.
Absolutely. Sure.
What's the best way to reach you?
Call me direct, 508-501-9214. We can do an intake, just a little interview over the phone, identify the best way to help you. And we'll do this for any type of mortgage, private mortgage, government-backed mortgage, reverse mortgages. That's a pretty common thing we're seeing now, unfortunately. These people who have taken out reverse mortgages and fall behind on their property taxes or their insurance. And those reverse mortgage companies will foreclose just as fast because of that. But they are
Okay.
just as willing to work with people who fall into that situation.
And also your website. What is that?
It is hope4hardship.org, for the number four, hope the number four hardship.org. And
Okay.
listen, the message to everyone out there, if you fall into this situation, do not immediately sell your home. Do not immediately agree to a cash buyer investor buying it. Do not immediately file bankruptcy. Talk to us first, and let's see if there's a way to save it that is affordable to you. And that's the promise that I give to everyone is we will figure out if keeping your home is affordable.
All right, Mike. Thank you. Terrific service, terrific message. Thank you for being our guest today.